You know, the scripting aspects, or moreover the programming aspects of creating a game have always been what's held me up the most, which is rather embarrassing considering that is the very foundation of the game. That's where everything is placed. That's where everything is made. That's where everything is done. That's the foundation of the game, and that's where I can't seem to get things straightened out. You know, and as I think about this project, you know, I'm gonna need to do some scripting, gonna need to make some of this and some of that, and do this and whatever, but, you know, I'm thinking, you know, with the huge power you get out of Kismet, I could actually create something along the lines of an RPG. Doing that just completely with Kismet and some level streaming and some things such as that. Nothing complicated at all. Completely within my ability. Okay, well, the actual Kismet code, once it's finished, would look really complicated and be taking up needlessly more amount of work than if I really knew how to script properly, but nonetheless, the option is there. But that's not what I'm trying to go for with the work I already have made. And speaking of that, as I was fiddling around with this most recent level I've been trying to build, as you may be able to notice, it's taken after the design of being a portion of a city. We got streets, we got tall buildings, and as I was walking around in there, I realized that the sizing is quite off. Everything just looks smaller than it should be, or rather, everything needs to look bigger, and yet we put the people in there and they're much smaller than they should be. And I poked around at it and fiddled around with some console commands for a while, and I think what I really ought to do is build the mod at a different scale than what we already have in Unreal Tournament 3. And I figured out something that would be just simply to equate one Unreal unit to 1 centimeter in real life, and I can go around and measure items in real life and actually get them to appear normal. But if I try to convert that scale down to what would be the rough approximate in the current scale for the game, everything would look much smaller than it really is. And maybe there's some simple camera modification that can be done, so maybe something with the field of view, I don't know, and that would get it looking proper. But I decided that perhaps the best thing to do, that I believe that I can do, is to completely change the scale, as I mentioned, and then just, of course, adjust the player size and where the player's camera is positioned, and everything should look proper then, and everything should work out as you would normally expect it to at that point. But of course that involves scripting, which is a little bit outside of my comfort zone, which is a little bit outside of what I can do. So instead, this week I turned my attention into a few other areas. So since scripting was going a little bit slowly for me, I basically just set it aside and started to work on other things. I started to put together a generic female model. This is what I basically started with. Pretty low poly, not exactly great. Many areas that need improvement, and it's not very complete. And while I was at it, I went on and also started a rough male form, both of which are just generic models that I can build from. and I decided to indeed build from them. This is actually the model for Criterion, lead female protagonist of the mod. And there's still a lot of things that don't look quite right, don't work quite right, but nonetheless I am impressed at many things that I do have. For example, that accessory belt came out better looking than I thought it would. Even if I don't quite have the feet showing the detail that looks proper, and the head is, well, still pretty dang rough. But I do find it acceptable enough to use for the time being, and I can actually import some custom characters for getting the sizing done properly so I can have characters sized properly to the new scale, and I can just build it all from there. I'll probably work on Kent next. And maybe that will come out looking a little better, but for the moment we have this. Yay.